Nelson, and these are the Globe Education podcasts for Macbeth. I'm here with Elliot Cowan, who's playing lead character in this year's production, and we're at the final interview now, which is going to talk about what's happened now that the play is actually up in performance and has been running for a while. I guess going back to the start of the performance period then, and asking just how, in every way, was opening night.
Yeah, it was great. It was a big night, I think. Yeah, it felt like a really big night, a bit of a sort of an event. The first show of the year, Shakespeare's birthday, St George's Day, Macbeth, not been done here for several years, big show. Ambitious ideas created by Lucy and the team. So the expectation was high and the atmosphere was thick. We had some great previews and we had some good feeling off the theatre. You know, for the first time I really got a sense of what the Globe's reception can be like and how it is playing out there to people you can see, and you know, that kind of communion. But we'd had our mishaps in the previews, and there were some elements where we were concerned or weakened, or you know, there were compromises, or had been. So when we opened, I think part of the relief is just having got through it, and you're in one piece. What's slightly odd is that we did have a matinee that afternoon, so you are pretty tired by the time you have to do the big night, but maybe that's a good thing. It sort of diffuses your nerves up to a point. It was well received on the night in terms of the audience, and we had a great party afterwards and felt that there was some reward to be had. That was sort of the middle of a very tough week for me personally. I'd had a tough weekend, and that sort of transgressed into the week towards opening, and that, you know, nothing personal, that's to do with the show. I had an accident and my leg was damaged, and so I then had to compromise slightly on some of the decisions we had made previously. Then there was this sort of niggling injury, well, quite painful injury I was carrying, and I wasn't as versatile then, or as nimble or as physical as I could be, and I suppose that was playing on my mind a bit. It's now a lot better, but that night was, you know, obviously an apex of that experience, and I know Lucy and myself, we were quite concerned about it. But no one knew really, so it all passed unnoticed. And we got what we got in terms of reviews, and I've not read them, but we're doing very well now.
Oh, wonderful. How much does the play change in performance? I know that previews are in some ways are designed with that give to allow that to happen, but I think I also often get the feeling that even beyond that, it's not a static thing in any way, that it continues to evolve. Has that happened in this production?
I think so, yes. I think there's definitely been things where we've had to, and we've naturally modified and varied our instincts and our interpretations. There is a show there that exists strongly as an interpretation by Lucy and by us all, and I suppose that's never really going to go too far off its axis. But I was speaking to someone just between this matinee and just now, a woman who's now seen the show 3 times, and she says, oh, it has changed, it's changed enormously, and what people are doing, and where you go, and where you sort of pop up to, and it's more down to sort of actually what you say and how you say it, really. I mean, obviously we don't change what we say, but we do we change what we mean, and we change where sometimes there might be a direction or reference point, or a pause, or there might be who you think you're talking to. I mean, there's certainly with Macbeth, this changes for me from time to time when I'm talking to an audience, to myself, as it were, to Lady Macbeth, or to one of the men, or to a ghost, or to a witch that I can't see, you know. And sometimes that's not wholly clear in what's been written, and that changes as an interpretation as you go along. But we've become very solid and very fit, match fit for this play, so we now have to go on there and deliver the story clearly, and I think people have said it's got clearer and clearer and clearer. And elements of the show that seem rushed and a little bit sort of not bodged together at all, but sort of hanging on by thread when you first open, then become very sound and solid, and you know that that's clearer and people should be understanding what's going on with. But generally I think the reception has sort of grown positively day by day, and we feel like people have heard about us and they're coming to see us because it's meant to be a good show.
And it's mostly sold out for the rest of them.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Macbeth does well, whatever the weather, but I think if people know that it's worth seeing anyway because of what we've done, then you will say, yes, it will become popular.
Yeah. You mentioned in talking about one of your speeches there, the phrase talking to the audience, and obviously one of the very fundamental differences about the Globe is the fact that you can see the audience. I'm wondering what impact it had on you, the audience finally coming in to this space. And,
Well, it did, yeah, massive. It was like, somebody had turned on a light, quite literally. The soliloquies then were about talking in discourse with somebody. They are internal, and they've been symbolic of or representational of internal thought and conflict of thought in one's mind, a dilemma. But in this language, from our vantage point, we've become very psychological and psychotherapeutic about it, perhaps. Or there have been various influences in the 20th century, from film to Freud. That means that we don't necessarily recognise that as clearly as before. This kind of discourse you have with yourself, but in this case, in the soliloquy, Shakespeare wrote it seems, for a discourse between the actor, the character, and the audience. And with their faces fully lit in daylight or what have you, and staring up at you, the audience became so clear to pinpoint that question. And I was immediately sort of liberated by that idea once I got into the space, that also, obviously you don't want to do it or deliver to just one person the whole time. That would be rubbish. But you have to place your thoughts in different parts of the theatre to honour every audience member as best you can. And I think that gives you space and place for landing one line against another and making that dialectic, that conflict clearer. So it was wonderful for that reason, and continues to be.
And so you've only got then 2 more weeks left.
More or less, yeah.
2.5 weeks. Do you have anything planned for afterwards? A well-deserved break?
My brother's just asked if I wanted to go to New York with him to help him shoot a video thing that he's doing. But also, I've got no work lined up. Other than a campaign I have to raise money for a show that I'm going to be directing later in the year at a theatre which is also trying to raise money to stay open. And that's in the East End, and that will be a sort of actor-directorial debut for me. And I'm just trying to raise money for that. So there's a kind of ongoing job there, but otherwise it's unformalised yet.
Well, thank you very much for the time you've given to Adult an Actor over the last couple of months. It's
Pleasure.
been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. It's been
Thank
for
you.
me. Thanks.